People, what is happening to our world, what is happening to our nations, to our societies, to the very foundations of freedom and reason. You see, there are moments in history when reality strikes us so hard that we cannot ignore it. And I tell you, the recent events surrounding Charlie Kirk are one of those moments. You have to understand, this is not just politics, this is not just culture, this is the battlefield of reality itself, the struggle for the soul of a nation. Charlie Kirk, a man who stood for principles for God, for liberty, has been taken from us, shot in front of hundreds, maybe thousands of people. And the immediate reactions, the shallow media narratives, the political noise, they do not touch the magnitude of what occurred. This is an attack on ideas, attack on civilization, an attack on the forces that value life, morality, and truth. I was with Charlie not long ago. He had me on his show because he wanted to speak about matters that most people refuse to see. He wanted to speak about the return of the gods, the spirits, the forces behind the scenes that manipulate the very fabric of our societies. And this was no abstract conversation. It was a warning, a revelation, and a glimpse into the war that most of you are blind to. 24 hours before his assassination, I was compelled to put online a prophetic post, The Demonic Secret of the Minnesota Shooter. And now, after what happened to Charlie, people are finally starting to see the connection, not the superficial connection, the political talking points, the nonsense about gun laws or identity politics. No, the real connection, the spiritual demonic warfare that is happening all around us. This is where people fail. They think that these tragedies, these assassinations, these acts of violence are random. They think that society, the system, the institutions are enough to protect us. But the truth, the brutal truth, is that we are surrounded by forces that you cannot see, forces that have infiltrated every aspect of life, from politics to culture, from schools to the media, and they are here to destroy morality, to destroy reason, to destroy the soul of man. Charlie Kirk was a believer. He was a man of conviction, a man of faith, and that made him a target. That made him a threat to the powers that are working to invert the world, to enslave humanity in fear, chaos, and for false ideologies. You see, when the Minnesota shooter committed his atrocity, it was not just a man with a gun. It was a man influenced by darkness, by forces that are real, by spirits that do not care for humanity, that seek only to destroy. This shooter had images, disturbing images, Jesus in the crosshairs of a gun, conversations with demons, drawings of evil and destruction, and the act itself, the planning, the targeting of children in prayer, it was all part of a hidden war. You might call it spiritual, you might call it metaphysical, but it is real. And people like Charlie Kirk, who speak for truth, who uphold God, who stand for morality, they are in the crosshairs, not because of politics, not because of ideology alone, but because they represent an alternative to the nihilism, the destruction, the chaos that the enemy desires. And the numbers, the patterns, the synchronicities, do not ignore them. People dismiss them as coincidences, but there is a logic to chaos. The Nashville shooter, the Minnesota shooter, their actions, their targets, their methods, they follow a pattern that is frightening, but it is also a warning. These events are not isolated. They are part of a larger design, a spiritual war being waged on this earth. And if you cannot see it, if you cannot recognize it, you cannot fight it. The Bible, the texts, the prophecies, they speak of these forces. They speak of angels and demons, of light and darkness, of men who are instruments of good and men who are instruments of evil. And the world, our societies, our governments, they operate as if none of this exists. They are asleep, hypnotized by money, ideology, and comfort, while the battlefield rages all around them. And now Charlie is gone, taken in an instant, shot for standing, for speaking, for believing. And we are left with a choice between ignoring reality, hiding behind our ideology, and pretending the world is safe, or waking up, arming ourselves with truth, morality, and courage, and confronting the forces that threaten our very existence. This is not a metaphor. This is not exaggeration. This is life or death. Not just for individuals, but for nations. You want to understand why America is in decline, why freedom is under attack, why morality is being undermined? It is because people refuse to see reality. They refuse to understand that there are forces behind the scenes, ancient forces that manipulate, that deceive, that destroy. And if you do not wake up, you will be the next victim. Now, let me tell you about the real battlefield. It is not politics. It is not culture. It is not even economics, though economics is a reflection of the morality and order of society. The battlefield is spiritual. The battle is for the heart and mind of humanity, and Charlie Kirk, in his courage, in his conviction, was a soldier in that fight. His murder, his assassination, is a warning to everyone who stands for God, for truth, for liberty. The enemy does not fight with debate. The enemy does not fight with law or logic. The enemy fights with chaos, with fear, with manipulation, with possession, and we see it in the acts of violence, in the shootings, in the patterns, in the corruption that seeps into every layer of society. The Minnesota shooter, the Nashville shooter, these are not random men. These are men who have been influenced, guided, or possessed by forces beyond the physical, forces that invert reality. The ages, the numbers, the targets, do you think these are coincidences? The numbers of victims, their ages, the way these attacks were carried out, all patterns that point to a reality that most refuse to acknowledge. And this is where Jonathan Cahn was correct in his vision, and yet it is also where many people fail. The world is not what it seems. The events are not what they seem. The causes are not what they seem. There is a hidden hand, a hidden force, and until you recognize it, you will continue to be helpless, to be a pawn, to be a victim. And yet there is hope. There is always hope, because God is stronger, because the forces of light exist alongside the forces of darkness, because men and women can choose to stand, to fight, to awaken. Charlie Kirk's life, his death, his courage, these are lessons for all of us. He showed that conviction matters, that faith matters, that morality matters, and that even in the face of overwhelming evil, one can stand and speak the truth. But we must do more than mourn. We must act. We must recognize the battlefield. We must understand the enemy. We must prepare ourselves spiritually, morally, intellectually to confront these forces wherever they appear. This is why the book, The Avatar, is so important. It is not just a book. It is a revelation. It is a map to understanding the hidden forces that influence our reality, our nations, our politics, our economies, our very lives. There are ancient forces at play, forces that have shaped history since the dawn of civilization. They are not myths, they are not legends, they are realities that continue to manifest in our time. And leaders, nations, and individuals may be influenced or guided by these forces, whether they are aware of it or not. And to ignore this is to ignore the truth of the world we live in. Think about this: the election of leaders, the rise and fall of nations, the patterns in society, the ideologies that dominate. All of these can be traced to forces that are beyond ordinary human comprehension, and yet they are real, tangible things, and they have consequences. If you do not see this, you will continue to be blind. You will continue to be manipulated. You will continue to be controlled by ideas and forces you do not understand. And America, my America, the America we love, is at a tipping point. Freedom is fragile. Morality is under siege. Reality itself is under assault. And if you do not awaken, if you do not fight, if you do not understand, you will lose everything. I think Charlie Kirk's death is a microcosm of this battle. It is a demonstration of what happens when truth stands against chaos, when faith stands against nihilism, when conviction stands against the forces of darkness. And make no mistake, these forces are real, they are active, they are relentless, and they will not stop until they are confronted. And confrontation is not polite, it is not subtle, it is not theoretical. Confrontation is boldness, courage, awareness, and action. It is speaking the truth, defending morality, defending freedom, defending life itself. Now, some will say this is too extreme. Some will say this is superstition, paranoia, exaggeration. I say to them, look at the evidence, look at the patterns, look at history, look at the numbers, look at the lives destroyed, the murders committed, the chaos unleashed. Open your eyes, open your mind, and understand that there is more to this world than meets the eye. There are forces at work that you cannot ignore, and if you do ignore them, you will fall victim, you will be deceived, you will lose your life, your freedom, your nation, your soul. The only solution is awareness, understanding, faith, courage, and action. We must pray, yes, but we must also act. We must awaken to the spiritual realities, the moral realities, the intellectual realities, and the practical realities of the world. We must recognize the enemy. We must recognize the battlefield. We must recognize the patterns, and then we must engage boldly, fearlessly, intelligently. Because in the end, reality favors the aware, the prepared, the courageous, and Charlie Kirk in his life and his death reminds us of this. America, my friends, is not lost, but it is at risk. The moral decay, the spiritual blindness, the ideological corruption. These are real, and the only answer is to stand, to awaken, to fight, and to align with truth, morality, and God. The forces of darkness are not imaginary, they are strategic, they are deliberate, and they are destructive. But the forces of light are stronger, they are eternal, they are victorious, and we can align ourselves with them. So I say to you, stand, pray, be vigilant, understand the hidden realities, recognize the forces behind history, behind politics, behind society, behind crime, behind violence. Do not be deceived by superficial narratives, by lies, by simplifications. Open your eyes, open your mind, open your heart, and engage in the battle that surrounds you for your life, for your nation, for reality itself. The book, the Avatar, is not just revelation. It is guidance, it is illumination, it shows the hidden hand, the ancient forces, the spiritual realities that influence every major event in our world. It reveals the patterns that most cannot see, and it calls us to action, to understanding, to courage, to faith. If you ignore it, you ignore reality. If you dismiss it, and if you dismiss the battlefield, and if you dismiss the battlefield, your surrender, your future, your freedom, your soul. Charlie Kirk's death is not just a tragedy. It is a wake-up call. It is a signal that the forces of chaos are active, bold, and deadly. But it is also a reminder that courage matters, faith matters, morality matters, and that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, there are those who will stand, speak, and act for the truth. And we must be among them. Do not forget, the enemy is real, the battlefield is real, the spiritual, moral, and intellectual fight is real, and it is everywhere, in politics, in society, in schools, in government, in media, in crime, in violence. And the forces that oppose God, that oppose morality, that oppose freedom, they are working ceaselessly, relentlessly, strategically. But God is stronger, the light is stronger, and those who align themselves with truth and courage will prevail. Stand for truth, stand for God, stand for morality, stand for freedom, and never forget the lessons of those like Charlie Kirk. They remind us of the stakes, they remind us of the battlefield, they remind us of what is at risk and what is worth fighting for. The times are dangerous, yes, but they are also moments of opportunity, of awakening, of courage, of action. So take this moment, understand reality, recognize the forces, align with truth, and fight the good fight, not with violence, but with courage, wisdom, morality, faith, and action. Because in the end, only the aware, the prepared, and the courageous will shape the future. Only they will stand victorious, only they will endure, and only they will leave a legacy worthy of freedom, life, and God. Remember this, always the world is more than it seems. History is more than it seems. Politics, violence, and tragedy are more than they seem. Behind everything, there are forces at work, forces that can destroy or redeem, and the choice, the responsibility is ours. Will we be passive, or will we awaken, understand, and act? The choice is yours, the choice is mine, the choice is ours. Stand strong, fight wisely, believe firmly, and never forget that good ultimately prevails. Stand for reality, stand for God, stand for freedom, and never ever surrender to chaos. The battle is real, the stakes are eternal, and the responsibility is ours. Be vigilant, be courageous, be faithful, and be unyielding. The world is watching, history is watching, and God is watching.